absolute nightmare. But with that being said, guys, the first guest that we have on today is actually Captain Trippy, who is somebody who is pretty, big in the scene. And Mr. Captain Trippy, how are you doing today?
Hey, this is Mike. How you doing?
Oh, good. Okay, so we got the name. So we got Mike. Mike, I gotta ask, back in the day, because you're known as the guy that has the Trippy ape with the Trippy captain hat, and Capetain is now the name. So back in the day, let's go through the Bored Ape story. How many did you mint at the time? Did you realize that Bored Ape was going to be what it is now? And did you know that that was going to be kind of a part of your, persona, looking ahead to what the NFT space is now?
That's a great question, and absolutely not. I actually did not mint an ape, and I knew about them. They'd come across, I had seen information about them. I thought, oh, that's pretty cool, but didn't mint any. My minting started with, and my journey in this started with first. I think, like a lot of people, I just found out about the punks, right? And at the time, I thought, oh my gosh, who would pay this much for a punk? Now looking back, I ended up paying a lot more for a punk, later on. But at the time, I was like, I'm not going to pay that. But Larva Labs was releasing the Meebits, and so I had just recently had minted a Meebit, and of course at the time paid 2.5 ETH for it, and was like, oh my gosh, I just paid 2.5 ETH for an avatar. And so I kind of was like sitting out the Bored Ape launch, and then about immediately I was kicking myself for not minting, because I almost instantly fell in love with them, and actually bought my first one at right at 0.5 ETH. That was my first one.
Yeah, it's
And
crazy to think that like pricing though, right? Like a 0.5, we're like, holy crap. And I remember when I was trying to pick my quote unquote like forever ape back in the day, going through, and it's like, oh my God, some of these are listed at 5. Like maybe I just pay that because I think these are like really, really cool. That's probably stupid, but like it's crazy to think that we could have gotten a bunch of these at the prices that they were.
It's unreal. Yeah, obviously looking back, hindsight's 2020. Obviously would have loaded up the truck. But didn't, and just along the way have kind of curated a nice collection of them, and happy where I stand right now with it. But yeah, love the apes, love the community. I've gotten involved with some other avatar and other projects, but I'm an ape at heart, and yeah, Capetain Tripply is my is my
You're forever
my
ape.
account.
Well,
Yeah,
I mean,
my
for
forever
now.
ape.
So with that being said, I mean, I remember a while ago that you decided to put like a package together as a bundle, and I think you listed it for like 1,000 ETH. Is that still up? Did you take it down? Because I know there was some like rumblings about like your decision on that from before on Twitter.
Yeah. So it's actually still up. I have it listed at 5,000 ETH.
Oh, okay, not
Yeah,
1,000, 5,000.
yeah, not 1,000. Yeah, 5,000 ETH. And you never know. Maybe you'll wake up one morning and somebody's grabbed it, and I've got to find a new forever ape. But if somebody wants to retire me, then I'll have to take that.
So one of the questions in the scene we get a lot is kind of, okay, so when there's big purchases that have happened, and we've seen like obviously massive ones, and I think like the number one ape that was like gold with the laser eyes or whatever went for like 400 ETH or something just the other day. Questions come up of, hey, like, is that money going to go straight back into another project? Is it going to go into Bored Apes? And for you, I don't know if you've made up your mind, but let's hypothetically say that it does sell. Are you going to then go and buy some floor apes? Are you going to put that elsewhere? Is it for you? Okay, cool. I'm retiring, having a good day. Like, what would be the mindset
Oh gosh,
for that kind of fun?
Yeah, great question. Now for me, it never stops. I love this. I'm having a blast. Just constant things going on, researching, finding out things, and learning. And yeah, I have fully immersed myself, or trying to fully immerse myself in this, and doing more and more with the community and with the space. And so yeah, if it did sell for that, I can't say that I would spend all 5,000 ETH back into NFTs and that kind of stuff. I would definitely take a chunk of that for staking ETH and creating some residual income there. But without a doubt, I would be buying more apes, more floor apes, supporting the project that I trust and know and love. Yeah, I would probably significantly increase my ape holdings at that point.
Love it, love it. And Negathor, what's up? Ronster, Crufster, thanks for hanging out. JVB, okay, but does he know that JVB has thought his ape is the best ape since day one? So Captain Trippy, you got a fan here in the chat that thinks yours one is the best. And I think, like, aesthetically, it's a killer. And so, going back to the Punks comic voting, for anyone that doesn't know, for Punks comic, for their second edition, they are doing an Ape Madness where they picked out of how many applications were there? I think there was like 600 or something initially. But then they had a kind of like a bracket of 64, I believe, where it was kind of like a contest to see who could get more votes for that. And I actually went up against Captain Trippy, and this guy demolished everybody on his way to the final, and holy hell, it was a challenge in the end. But I think that it's crazy to see the impact that the Apes have had, and I don't want to talk on like Bored Apes for too long, but I think it's cool because, you know, obviously you're a huge name just regarding the Bored Ape space. But what do you think long-term the value of Bored Apes are? Is this something where we're solidified as the number 2? Do you think that they ever do actually flip CryptoPunks? The fact that everybody's building different brands and stuff off of the Apes, it feels like a movement that's not really happened before in the space, and I'm just wondering your thoughts on the future of Bored Apes.
Absolutely. Let's talk about that contest between the two of us, first of all.
Okay.
So that was a lot of fun. And so, you know, that was the final round for one of us to go into the Elite Eight, I guess is what they were calling it, Elite Apes. And yeah, the first 2 rounds, I went up against some really, really great apes and people in the community. And but still, yeah, I mean, it still won pretty handedly without really doing anything. And then I'll be honest, I went into this round and I thought, you know, I knew who you were and that kind of stuff, and I was like, oh, you know, I'll be okay or whatever. And then, dude, you just came out of the gates like it was just crazy. And then I remember it was like the night before, and I'm like sending messages on Twitter to people, and I'm like, come on, please vote for me, whatever. I'm like, I can't believe that I actually was doing that because at the time I was like, it's no big deal. If I get in, you know, great. If not, no big deal. And then like there's like a certain competitiveness that kind of kicks in, and that certainly happened. And I was like, I don't want to lose. And so, yeah, at one point that night, I don't know how many messages I sent out, 20 or 30, and Twitter actually stopped letting me send messages out at some point. And it was like right when I caught up to you. I think I took a screenshot. It was like 50-50. And I was like, and then that happened. And I was like, I'm toast. Because it was just like anytime I could even like make up any ground at all, it was like immediately you would just pull like 2 or 3% back in front of me. And I'm like, this is ridiculous. So that was fun. And fun to be a part of, and good for the community. To answer your question regarding value in the future, I think that's a really tough call to make right now as far as like, yeah, apes would flip punks. I'm not going to say that. I'm not going to make that call. Punks have been around. They were the the OG Avatar project, and obviously have some really, really big backers, including some very big funds, I believe, if I remember correctly, as far as buying some up. And so I think it's definitely possible that we could see that with the apes as well. I'm not necessarily for that because I love the culture that's being built with the apes, and we're at like 52 to 5,300 individual ape owners, which is just phenomenal for us. And so I've bet on teams, and I've had to learn. I've kind of learned through the process to bet on teams and art, and kind of like a combination of things. And so, so far, I do believe that, in my opinion, the Bored Ape team kind of stands alone in regards to how they're delivering for their community and what they're producing. And so, long term, I'm extremely bullish on the apes. I think the future is bright. We've got the mutant ape breeding coming soon, and gosh, I mean, it's only been 3 months, and if you look back and like peak punks, I mean, 2 or 3 months ago, I think the punks were about where we were now. And of course, then the Gary V big 8 punk purchase, and then the Three Arrows Capital like attack on the floor, Floormageddon, as I like to call it, happened, and so they just kind of took off and left the apes. But with Christie's coming up and everything we've got in the pipeline, I'm certainly not counting them out, but it's a tough call to make to say that they would flip the punks for sure. That's become punks have become a real store of value, I think.
For sure. Now, I want to talk about some of the other projects because you've gotten into some bigger ones, and obviously you made a pretty big deal for the gold gutter cat, and I also see that you have some, I think that's more expensive World of Women with the purple skin with the butterfly on it, but you go for typically pretty big purchases. Are you someone that always goes for what you think is like the highest value in a single purchase, or do you do more of the buying up the floor and we just don't notice it as much?
So it's a combination of both. With the gutter cats, I currently own 3 cats and 3 rats. Wish I owned more. That's what I've got. so many projects came out all at once. It was just like boom, boom, boom. I mean, multiple a day, right? And so I had to really kind of take a step back and get out of that constant minting, and took a step back and said, you know what, I'm going to take a more patient approach, watch some projects. It means I get in a little bit later sometimes and maybe leave money on the table, but it also means, you know, I'm in less projects that may, you know, significantly go down in value. And so I've been watching projects, and I think it's natural for, if you're big on a project, I think it's natural for you to hold them. And so a lot of them I'm about to say, I'm not trying to pump my bags. A lot of them I'm about to say is in my wallet. So just disclaimer on that. But when I like a project, you know, I'll kind of dip my toe in. And so with Gutter Cats, yeah, I guess I more than dip my toe in by buying the golden one with the gold crown.
I was about to say that's going in hard.
Yeah, so it's more than dip my toe in that particular case. But I also look for, I'm giving away some of the trade secrets, but I also look for value a little above floor, and that one was well above floor, so it doesn't really count. But I do look for value a little above floor. I think those are the best values in the space. The most liquidity obviously comes from buying the floor. I always stayed away from buying the floor of the apes, and I don't know, you know, I think part of that was I like the floor apes. I think that they're all, you know, I love all the apes. There's some that I like better than others. I always avoided the floor because I think as somebody that had more than one or more than, you know, quite a few apes, I just couldn't pull myself to just buy a ton of floor apes, and I think take that opportunity away from others. So, you know, whether I stick to that strategy or not moving forward, I will say this: I did mint the most recent thing that I minted besides today. The first time I've minted something in a while was today. I minted some Greycraft. Love the team behind Greycraft and what they're doing, but I'm excited to see what they do there. But before that, the last one I did was the World of Women, and I probably minted 20 of them, and then I bought 60 more, but they weren't on the floor. So I was just kind of going through as people were putting them up after the drop. I kind of looked for traits that I liked and that kind of stuff, and actually landed a Night Goddess for 1 ETH, you know, the day of the drop, and loved the one that I picked up. And actually recently, Logan Paul had offered me 21 ETH for it, and I just sent him a diamond hand message back and said, hey, I'm hanging on to this. So that's one of the ones I recently minted. Yeah, so there's definitely some projects that I'm getting high that I'm liking a lot more than others right now.
Well, I mean, talking about like quality of projects and whatnot, if you look back to the time when like Bored Ape and Gutter Cats came out, and we could probably brainstorm for a second and name some of the other ones that came out kind of around that same time. I guess Wicked Craniums wasn't necessarily right then, but I think within that time frame. But we're seeing a lot of the projects that were out then that I think a lot of people were, you know, obviously flipping and stuff, doing a lot of really, really cool stuff. With Gutter Cats, are doing, you know, everything under the sun. Same with Bored Apes, and Wicked Craniums doing big announcements today. Did we actually see kind of like a cluster of the best projects come out at once, or do you still think that, you know, like within this month and a bit more ahead, we're going to see even better ones than that? Because I mean, VeeFriends I think was kind of in that cluster as well, but there was a lot in that kind of area where Bored Apes came out that it was very, very quality projects that I think a lot of people didn't realize at the time.
You're exactly right, and VeeFriends is one that I missed on. I don't own a VeeFriends. Would love to own one, but I don't currently. Yeah, but as far as the projects that came out at that time, I don't want to fudge, so I don't want to name the project. But there's a project that I went pretty hard in, and it didn't do well out of the gate. And so that's really what was one of the things that, you know, I try to learn from everything, and that was an experience that I had. That I'm like, you know what, you know, let's take a more cautious approach and be a little smarter with where we're throwing some of this ETH. And so I slowed it down and took that more cautious approach. Now, having said that, you know, there's just, I mean, every day we have new projects coming out, new mints, and I'll be honest, I can't keep up. You know, you know, I run a business and have a family, and, you know, full life outside of this space, and so gosh, it's like a full-time job just keeping up with what's going on. And I can't, you know, people send me, my DMs are full of like, hey, can you look at this project and this? And I would love to have a team to help me kind of analyze some of that stuff, but I just don't right now. And so I think what we're seeing with some of the projects that came out around that time is you're seeing the ones that were the winners, and the ones that kept on building and making a difference succeeding now, and the ones that and I'm not saying that all the winners have been picked yet. There still could be some from that era, that time period, that still come out and say, you know what, we're still building. We're may just take a little bit longer, but I do think that once somebody releases something and they create a roadmap, then it's kind of like, okay, can this team actually execute on this project on this roadmap or not. And I think we're seeing who's executing well, who's innovating and expanding on that, and who's not. And this is not an exclusive list. These are just ones that I had my eye on, but you mentioned them. Gutter Cats. Wicked Craniums is one that I'm really paying attention to right now. I actually purchased 3 craniums and 3 horses right before the Pop Warner drop. And I'll be honest, I don't know what the big announcement was today. I have not looked into that yet, but they're doing some cool stuff. Loving the craniums, Gutter Cats, World of Women. Those are some of the ones that they're in my wallet specifically that I'm liking outside of the apes. And I hope I'm not leaving anybody out that I really like, but those are some of them.
No, for sure, for sure. And so is there kind of any projects out there of the ones that you've not mentioned that you kind of think are undervalued at current time?
Absolutely. Yeah. So I'm actually looking more outside of the avatar space right now and looking at different like long-term plays and quality. And I'll be honest, and I know I tweet about this some, but like I'm just a huge bull on House of Kiba. And so I actually bought up 10 more memberships a couple of days ago. So I'm up to 35 Genesis memberships now. And what this team is delivering, I think, is very, very underrated, I guess, is what I see from this team is I see them building and building and building and waiting until they get things right before they release it. And so just from being in their Discord and hearing rumors about some of the things they're working on, I think they've got some pretty big announcements coming up with some collaborations. I think they're working with Des Bryant, Mellow Ball, Zaire Wade. They've got their own metaverse, from what I understand, that they're working on. And anyway, I've heard some other rumors as well in the Discord of some things that they're doing. And if all that's true, which I believe it is, I think they've got some really big things in the works. And just seeing what they drop, it's all like the quality on it is ridiculous. And then like for the members of House of Kiba right now, they dropped us some Kiba suits, or part of Kiba suits. And right now, I mean, if you look, I mean, they're pretty inexpensive right now because they have not announced what that utility will be with them. But that's another thing about House of Kiba is just the utility that they do. They're building into everything, and so that's more of a metaverse, like long-term play for me. Love that. Love what they're doing.
So for I guess projects and like the NFTs as a whole, there's a lot of clamoring about utility, and obviously there's some pieces or NFTs out there that work just for art. What do you think of the like Damien Hirst type things with Tom Sachs, where you have kind of like those real life people that are coming in and providing the art, or in the one case Rockets, and having the kind of different aspect of like the utility versus like standalone art. And I suppose the Tom Sachs Rocket is not like a good example to go into that. So let's just kind of like focus on Damien Hirst, and we could say like X Copy. I see that you have like a pop art one on your Twitter as well that you shared. What do you think the value of those art pieces goes to, and how many new artists do you think we're going to see that are going to go completely mainstream? Because for a lot of these ones, I feel like their notoriety is because they're big artists in NFT land, but not real life. But then you see Damien Hirst, who has a huge name, like in person, and now going to like the NFT side of things is also garnering massive amounts of value.
Yeah, so I don't own any of the Hearst. Would like to have one. I love seeing traditional art coming into the space. I think for mainstream adoption, that's what's part of what's needed, and that's nothing against the artists in our space. We have some phenomenal artists in the space that kind of got started in the space, but I also kind of like seeing the ones that are more famous, let's call it, outside of this kind of come in, because I think we're going to see a convergence of the two. And I think Damien Hirst is a perfect example of that with what he's doing. Wish I owned a Hearst as well. Have not invested in one yet, but it's definitely something I'll keep my eye on. You mentioned X Copy. So one of the things that I do look for when I invest in something, one of the categories, if you will, that I look at is are the art pieces that have more prominence. And so X Copy is one that really stands out to me. He's been doing the art. He's been in the space for a while. And so the X Copies that I do own are more of his, one of 25, one of 100, I don't own any one of ones, unfortunately. But I do like the art. And I do think that as more and more people come into the space, I do think artists like Xcopy are just going to become more and more famous. And so definitely wanted to hang on to a few pieces of those before they got out of my range. Um, and also, regarding prominence, if you took a peek in my wallet, I don't own any autoglyphs. I actually had sold off enough stuff. Gosh, it's probably been 3 or 4 weeks ago to buy one autoglyph. And at the time, the floor was probably like 80 to 100 ETH, right? Which is still like a crazy amount.
Crazy.
Now it's
crazy.
way, way out of my range. Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, it's way out of my range now. I think it's like 300 or 400 ETH floor. But instead of buying one autoglyph, I made the decision I essentially just swept the floor of the color glyphs, which I know are not the same project, but it is like a continuation in a way of what the autoglyphs did. And so anyway, I bought 32. I bought 32 of those. Anything I was going to put in an autoglyph, I just put it all into the color glyphs. And because I do think that those, the crypto art, the Arte, or however you pronounce it, color glyphs, some of those that are out there right now, they're still within kind of a striking distance. I do think as more and more people come into this, and more people the autoglyphs are just so far out of range for 99.99% of us that a lot of us are going to be looking at, hey, what else is out there? And I think that's where some of these other ones are come into play. So I understand the historical significance of the autoglyphs for sure. And I'm not saying that these others will catch up in value to them, but I do think that there is something to say about these other projects from around that same time period.
So Mason's wondering about your thoughts on blockchain games, because we focused on a lot of avatars and some other stuff, but what's your thoughts on gaming and blockchain?
Oh gosh, yeah. So I get told all the time I need to dive into Axie Infinity and Zed Run and some of these gaming projects. And this may be blasphemy, but I've never been a gamer, and so
Mike, oh my God, he's not a gamer.
I know. I need to get into that, and I find myself getting more and more into it. Partly because I have a 6-year-old son who's very, very much in it. So he loves playing the games, and he's he plays what's it called, Roblox, I believe is what it is. And so he's like, Daddy, play this with me. So I'll get on with him and play that with him. So I'm starting to. I'll be honest, I was talking to somebody just, I think 2 days ago, a friend of mine, and I'm like, dude, we got to just dive into Zed Run and Axie Infinity and some of these gaming things. Just, it's definitely an area that I don't know enough of, and then I need to dive deeper into. Right now, I'm trying to expand my knowledge on the metaverse a little bit more and what all's out there. I bought a couple of pieces the other day from CryptoCities, which I thought looked pretty unique, and I think that they're going to be in the sandbox and some stuff. So anyway, just trying to expand into some new areas and focus less on, I've got some art, I've got some avatars, but what else is out there in gaming and metaverse are kind of the next steps that I need to take.
Okay, so we have a couple people that, are obviously veterans in the NFT space, and also I'm trying to foster an environment of getting newer people into the space with some basic tips and stuff. So Mike, do you have anything for beginners, experienced people in general? Any advice for dealing in the NFT realm?
So I think you've got to focus on quality. And we're starting to see quality emerge, which we've spoken about. I do still think you have projects that are probably still coming out that will end up being quality, and so I don't know them all. But one we spoke of earlier that I think is quality and continuing to improve, that has a very low floor, are the craniums. And so I would say if you're new to the space and dipping your toe in, I would look at ones that I would ask questions. And you'll see on my Twitter, I'll constantly ask questions, and that, part of that's for me to learn, and part of it's to open the minds of other people that in the community to kind of think as well. But that helps me figure out, okay, I haven't even heard of that before. I need to dive into that or whatever, look into it. And so I would just say, ask questions, be open-minded, don't be, and I'm guilty of this as well, try not to FOMO into anything. That's where you get burned. And that's happened to me as well. And for people that have been in the space longer, there's probably there are people out there that know a lot more about this than I do. Because there's so much happening, I do just try to focus on now as much quality as possible. I'll take some flyers every once in a while, take some risks, but for the most part, I'm investing in art blocks or some historical art pieces or utility and avatar projects that are starting to prove themselves. I'm just trying to focus on the quality more than the quantity at this point.
And if you know or want to share, can you tell us your best play and then your worst play in the NFT space so far?
Oh gosh, best play. I honestly think the best play was buying Captain Trippy
W.
when I
Love it.
did. Yeah, I mean that was a huge. I mean, I had been stacking ETH for a while, and all about the ETH, and like, I want to hold this ETH and stake it and all this kind of stuff until, and then anyway, when that happened, I mean, gosh, that's been probably 2 or 3 months ago when that happened, and at the time it was, you know, it was kind of a jaw dropping purchase. I think I don't know what the second highest purchase had been at that time, but it wasn't anywhere close to that, and so it was a big swing for me at the time, and but it's turned out to be, I think, probably my best play. I'll be honest, I prefer not to say my worst
Oh,
play.
that's fine. That's fine. Don't worry about it.
And that's just because again, like every once in a while I may say something that comes across as FUD. I really try to stay away from that. And so one of what I would consider worst plays right now, I still communicate with the team. They're still working behind the scenes. And I don't think it's fair to them for me to put down the project, because I still do think that there's a chance that they can keep building and create something, but I just don't want to FUD.
Okay. So here, let me rephrase that. What thing have you FOMO'd into somewhat recently that you're like, I probably shouldn't have, but you did it anyway?
FOMO'd into.
Or do you have the self-control that's unmatched in the space?
No, I don't know that I do. I'll be honest. I FOMO'd into CryptoCities a couple of days ago, and I bought 3 off the floor. And at the time, I was like, oh my gosh, what did I just do? And then the floor went up to 30 like the next day, and I was like, oh, that ended up being a great play. So yeah, you just never know how something's going to play out. But I did kind of take a risk on those, because I didn't know enough about it to probably have put as much into it as I did. But I kind of looked at them and immediately was kind of like, I get this and I see what they're trying to do. And so I took that chance. And anyway, I like that project, and it'll be interesting to see where they go with it.
W. All right, guys, that's Captain Trippy. Mike just threw his Twitter down there in the chat. Be sure to follow him. Mike, thank you so much for coming on, and hopefully we'll have you back sometime soon.
Thank you so much. I've really enjoyed it.
Yeah, love it. All right, enjoy your day.
All right. See you, buddy. Bye.
All right, yo, Captain Trippy. Yo, that was crazy. I love that. That was good. Guys, shut up about CryptoCities.